Welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast. Hello, welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast, where we discuss line of duty deaths of firefighters and paramedics to learn from these tragic incidents and possibly reduce our chances of being injured in the future. This is a Tailboard talk. We've got a Tailboard talk here talking about the what current things have we seen? We've done 30 of these podcasts of line of duty deaths, and we do see a lot of common themes. We're not alone in that. There's other agencies that have seen that as well, such as NIOSH. They've identified the top 5 casual factors of firefighter deaths and injuries on the fire ground. And there's also the Mayday Project, Don Abbott's Mayday Project, which analyzes a whole bunch of statistics. They did surveys. Fire departments can send in their Maydays, and they both part-time and career environments, and they've done surveys of what has come up. So we'll share some of that information here today. But before I get too far into the description of this Tailboard talk, I'm joined today by Doug and Dirk. I'm Paul, of course, your host. And Doug and Dirk, how are you guys doing today?
Yeah, doing well. This is a double header, I guess, today, which is awesome. Just looking forward to the conversation here, and nothing new really. I think I've said it the last time that on vacation, still on vacation, so still enjoying it. And what am I doing? Oh yeah, I started reading a book. Not reading a book, listening to a book, audiobook. Because Paul always asks about books, so I thought, before you ask, I'll say it. The 9 L's of Leadership by Coley Moore. And I bought the book, and again, I'm not a great reader and don't have much time. So I just went on, I think it's Audible. Yeah, it's on Audible. And it's good. It's good listening. I bought into it after 5 minutes because he's talking about culture in the fire service. And when he was talking, it was like, does he work for my department?
Awesome.
Again, it just shows that, not every department is perfect, and everybody has good things and everybody has bad things. And, the grass is always green on the other side. But it was good. It's a good book. I highly recommend it. So I'm chapter 2, so I'm not far in. But
excellent. Great. Well, good input.
Like Dirk said, we're doing a double header of recording today. It won't be a double header of listening, but not much is new since an hour ago when we did the other episode. But I know, Paul, I'm just bugging you. Yeah, it's nice to get a couple of these done while my family's visiting the in-laws, and we have some time to pound out a few. And Dirk's on vacation. I start vacation in a couple weeks, and looking forward to the Oilers playoff run coming up. And just let's get at it. This will be a fun one to get going on.
And I'm permanently on vacation, except I'm teaching 2-3 days every week.
Hey, we're teaching coming up. Dirk and I are going to teach a course together.
Right. Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Actually, he's going to be the lead, and I'm going to be his
the lead instructor. Perfect. He has to do.
Well, that's why, because he's got all the certificates.
He's got to do extra work. That's good.
He's got to do all that. Yeah, I was saying I'm going to have all the fun and none of the responsibilities, so it's all up to him.
Perfect. Love being the second. I'm being the second too for all these ICS courses I'm teaching in April here, and I'm not the lead, which is awesome. I'll just sit there and look pretty and add in a little bit here and there.
Oh, that'd be tough for you.
I was waiting for that one. Yeah.
You love it. I got to take a swing, like.
That's right.
You set us up, Paul. You set us up for that one.
I did. So, we talked about the common factors. As we're doing this podcast, we've discovered a lot of repetition of similar issues that cause line of duty or are factors in line of duty deaths. The NIOSH has identified, National Institute for Occupational Health and Safety, or Safety and Health, has identified the 5 top ones, and they are improper risk assessment. So what's going to happen? Like that wall that collapsed when they were interior on the 4th floor in in what town was it? Should have the list in front of me.
Pennsylvania somewhere? I can't remember.
Sorry.
The one where they went in and then came out and then went in?
York, Pennsylvania. Yep.
Because we had Baltimore as well, right? The
Baltimore,
collapse.
same thing. Yep.
Yeah.
The building looked risky right from the start.
Yeah.
The lack of incident command. So incident command just not being enough, not enough people, not enough training, that kind of stuff, poor communications. The lack of accountability, we'll go into all these here as we go forward, but didn't know who was working where, when, why, how. Inadequate communications, staying on the one radio channel. People couldn't get on the radio. That was a big one in Baltimore for sure. The accountability was one in Worcester. Same thing. They didn't know where people were. They didn't have, a sector officer inside the building. The lack of SOPs or failure to follow established SOPs. So not having SOPs to teach people to follow or not following them, those are often the issues. You think way back to the library in Porterville, California, where the 2 firefighters died, went in there on their own, looking for these people without a hose line. The other units that showed up didn't back them up either. They were spraying water from the inside to the outside. They have offensive teams and defensive at the same time in the same building. Yellowknife was the same thing, guys on the roof and guys inside the lean-to.
Yeah.
While NIOSH 5 is an area of concentration to prevent future firefighter deaths, one area that doesn't seem to be addressed is the fire department culture. I somehow wish that NIOSH could evaluate the culture of a fire department. You just talked about it in that book that you started to read, to determine its role in firefighter line of duty deaths. In many cases, the NIOSH 5 could be the NIOSH 6, considering the vital role of culture in firefighter safety. The blatant one for that is Charleston.
Yeah,
Charleston.
we talked about this though it hasn't come out yet, but the last line of duty podcast we've done. There was some mentioning about how people interacted with each other, headstrong people basically taking over leadership of a team rather than the officer taking leadership, and that's also culture, right? If you don't have the respect for the officers, that's a cultural problem, I think. My thing is like, and for me, when I think about line of duty deaths and all these that we've done so far, 360 have not been done, and not sure if that falls under command structure or any of these, but for me that's a freestanding one of the number one cause of line of duty deaths is a lack of 360 and a continuing 360, right?
And
maybe that's
risk assessment. That's number one, risk assessment. What's the risk here?
Yeah.
What's the
Well, if you say risk assessment in a fire department, then everybody's looking at you like, what are you talking about? Like you work any construction site, they do safety meetings in the morning and everybody has to fill out the hazard assessment form. We don't do that. We have to do this before we respond to the calls, right?
The fire's in the basement on the Charlie side and it's a walkout. Which way should we go? What's the risk, right? There's no one in the building. Everybody's out.
That's why we do training and and discuss things ahead of time, because a construction crew, I know you know this, but a construction crew is coming to the same construction site every day and they know what's going on. Sure, there might be new people here and there. They have a little quick meeting and whatever. We're going to events that just happened right now. We don't have time to sit down and have a meeting on the tailgate before we go in, but that's why we need to train and say, okay, if we had a basement fire in a walkout, what would we do? So that when we get there, we already had the meeting. Our brains already heard this before and we can remember, 360, walkout basement. Maybe I shouldn't go in the front door. Stuff like that, right? And yeah, we're talking about the one we just did, but it's no different than our tailgate safety meetings can't happen at 9:00 in the morning. They have to happen ongoing all the time so that it's in our head when we get to the real call.
Yeah. And that's culture, as Paul said. Culture has a big influence on how much do we train, how much do we talk about the job. It's not just the drilling on skills, but it's also just the what if. Have your no, I don't even want to call it round table. Just have your kitchen meeting, your family time, and then talk about the job, right? Not just what you've done during a hockey game, or
Even
right.
more than that, it's to me, it's like a personal thing. Your brain has to be engaged. That like when you're driving around and just look at a building in your town or in your first due area or a medical call you go to, and you can just say to yourself like, huh, if this was a fire out that window at 3 in the morning, or like looking at a house thinking like, well, that's probably a living room and that's probably a bedroom and that's probably the other bedroom. So that when you see these things in anger, as Paul always says, you you know what to do, right? Like it's not your first time. It might be your first actual time, but you can say in your, well, I've put this fire out in my head 1,000 times. I understand. I know what I'm going to do here, right?
Recognition, prime decision making, right, Paul?
Exactly, and that's why many command training programs uh, will identify. What are the critical fireground factors? It's a 3-story walk up. It's a strip mall. It's burning in the basement. It's a tanker truck in the middle of the road. Whatever those
Wildland
factors
fire,
are,
yeah.
and then make a risk management plan. How are we going to risk it or manage it? Well, if it's a fire in the basement, we're going to attack from the basement. If it's a tanker truck on fire on the highway, well, we're going to block the highway. We're going to put foam on it. Whatever is develop a risk management plan. How we're going to deal with this, a strategy, define it. Everybody knows what the strategy is, and develop an incident action plan, which is basic ICS. What are your critical factors? Life safety, incident stabilization, property and environmental conservation. What's the next step? Develop a strategy to meet all those. Once you pick a strategy, implement it, make sure everybody's safe, accountable, you have communications, you use your resources effectively, and there you go. So many command programs follow that, and that's what we see. And part of that, like you say, is culture. I almost wonder if the culture of the full-time career department, where at least I think there's more time spent available to discuss those things. Whereas when you have a part-time on-call department or volunteer department, yes, there's camaraderie time and there's time to do activity and stuff, but there's less sitting around the kitchen table talking about that call, because they all got to go back home to work or to school or to home or whatever, because they're not getting paid to be there. Whereas in a career department environment, there's maybe more opportunity to do that. We'll look later on. I've got some facts here in the script that the Abbott program displays about volunteer versus full time, but it's
I
interesting to look at
Yeah,
that.
I gotta. Well, that reminds me of Aaron Fields. Doug and I, we had the privilege to listen to him a few times. Um, but with Aaron said, when you look at volunteers, and he calls them both professional fire departments, right? So
Sure,
we're not.
sure,
It's not professional and volunteer. It's a career and volunteer,
right.
and they should be both professionals because we're doing the same job. Um, when he compared them, when you do your training or drill night or whatever you want to call it, it's 3 hours on a Thursday evening. You spend 2 hours training. So the math is like I spend 2/3 of my time training when I'm there. You put that in a career department that has 12-hour, 14-hour, 24-hour shifts. If we would spend 2/3 of our time there on drilling and training, would be amazing, but we don't. And I think because it's scheduled with the volunteers, the drill night is always Thursdays. And let's just say everybody shows up at least 3 times a month. Overall, you get more training than as a career firefighter, right?
How many reports have we seen the recommendations, or like the one in Bryan, Texas, where the chief talked about how we've changed our training and we're making sure the guys have more time to train. Many of these recommendations, Charleston was the same. It came out of there that we need to train more, but it's difficult in an organization with 1,000 staff and doing calls every day. How do we partition off? And it really ends up being the captain's job or the district chief's job to make sure that environment is there and that culture is there to train, right?
That is the culture we're talking. I mean, that is the ideal culture, but
Yeah.
the reality looks a little bit different for various reasons. Yeah, you're right. You're more busy. You got more calls. Um,
Look at the the thing I put in a paper here. This comes from the NIOSH thing. Culture of unsafe actions lead to firefighter fatalities. The positives in the fire service, of course, brotherhood, honor, public service, teamwork, fire department family, compassion for others. The negatives in that same culture: seat belts, caution driving, how we park at a call, inadequate PPE or usage of PPE, lack of communications like IRR reports for other units. What do I need to say that on the radio for? I'm in command. I'm first one here, but the other units need to hear it too, right? Lack of a size up, 360. That's a culture thing.
it is.
I'm too lazy to walk around the building or send someone. It's not lazy. I don't
I'm
know
not
what
sure. No, that has something to do with laziness. That's if you blame the culture, that would be complacency, maybe.
okay,
Because
complacency is a better
we've
word.
never done this. We never needed that. We never had a line of duty death. So whatever we're doing is great, right? That's a not so healthy culture, I think.
Project Mayday looked
Mhm.
at 5,102 documented Maydays. 59% no 360. 17% 360 incomplete. Only 24% of the 5,100 Maydays had a 360 completed. You know, you normalize deviance, right? SCBA tanks not filled completely. We've had several where the SCBA tanks, 4,000 pounds is good enough, right? Well, that 500 pounds is the 500 you needed, right? So we've seen that because there's no compressor handy, or I don't want to use the compressor, or whatever the excuse is. Portable radio is not used. We just did one. Portable radio was in the truck, right? And the other portable radio was off in when they did the after action evaluation. The portable radio was on the firefighter, but it was off. Couldn't use it.
I
Go no
think
matter what.
I
Go no
think
matter what.
I think
Sorry.
you can't always do a 360 of every building you go to. But a 360 doesn't need to be done by one person.
Right.
You can get a report from a different company on the back. New York City, the roof guy goes to the roof and his first priority is go to the Charlie side and look down and tell the battalion chief or division chief what's going on in the back. I mean, in rural settings, Paul, that we've been to fires of work sheds or barns or whatever that are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet long. And if you're in a high-rise building or you're at the Stricker Street row house where there's 12 units all connected, I don't think anybody's expecting anybody to do a one block 360. But that's why in Baltimore, when you're going to a one block long building, the second due company goes to the back. Sure, you don't need to say, I'm in command or I'm the first officer, I'm going to do a 360. But the with everybody that's there, you need to see all sides of the building and all communicate with each other what's going on.
It's
And
still a
and
360.
maybe if you go to the back and everything's completely normal and fine, maybe you don't need to say anything on the radio. But if you go to the back and, hey, there's a propane tank here, or there's a walkout basement, or there's a whatever, a swimming pool, an in-ground swimming, then you have to get on the radio and say that. Or
There's a 30-pound Rottweiler in the
we're
backyard.
in the Charlie side, there's fire from the ground to the top. You need to. That's what people need to know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other deviation they talk about here is the go no matter what. And that made me think of the Challenger shuttle disaster. It's really cold out, and I'm really worried about the O-rings, but we got to go today because the pressure's on them. And they went, and they ended up dying, right?
Well, that's our smoke and fire showing. We always go to the front door. That's our always go to, and 99% of the time, firefighting is pretty easy, and it will work out fine. But that point 1% of the time, you get bitten in the buttock. So you don't have to beat me out here.
Yeah, here's some statistics, right? Out of all those career Maydays, there was 12,000. They had career Maydays, 12,000, and they had 5,000 or 5,800 Maydays from 2015 to 2021. The time of day for a Mayday is most likely 29% in the career is from midnight to 3 a.m. 23% from 3 a.m. to 6, and they go dramatically down during the day.
Yeah. So half of them are between midnight and 6 a.m.
That's right. Yep, over half even. And then the for the volunteer, it's different. It's actually reversed. The volunteer part time, it's 21% after 9 to noon is the highest at 21%.
When everybody's at work and maybe can't come to the call.
That's when they get Maydays, I guess. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying is they might not get as much turnout to the call because all the volunteers are gone to work and they don't have as many guys responding.
They're short staffed.
And then shit goes wrong, right?
Because we've seen staffing is an issue, right? It's been proven over and over. NFPA, they've all done tests on it. We've done 30 LODD reviews where staffing on the first 2 or 3 trucks was a critical factor in the event, which it says, which unit's involved in Maydays? 51%.
The first arriving.
The career department, 74% in the part-time volunteer department is the first unit.
In a career department, 99% of the time, 24 hours a day, that unit's got the same staffing on it. In a volunteer department, you might have 6 guys at 7 p.m. on your first out engine, and at 7 a.m. it's like it's only us 3. Like we better go. You know what I mean? Like that's what these numbers show me. Maybe I'm wrong, but
and the part-time or non-career probably don't have designated roles that are that clear, right? Which is always one you've always liked is seat assignments, as you used to call it, right? If I'm in the right rear seat, I'm catching the hydrant. If I'm in the left rear seat, I'm grabbing the pre-connect, whatever those assignments are. But you know it. But
to me, there's no reason why a volunteer fire department can't do that, right?
But they don't. They don't, because we say, well, we never know who's going to come, and so is to this, that, whatever, indifferent, doesn't know how to do it,
it's
whatever.
Because people like you want to hire people that only drive the truck.
Oh, slam!
Then they know what to do. So if you have a seat assignment and you teach everybody, and it doesn't matter who shows up, if you're sitting in that seat, you're a nozzle today, you're a backup today. These are the tools you're using when the house is on fire or when there's grass fire going on.
But that's why even in a volunteer department, you need to have a minimum level of training. You must have this before you can come on the calls with us so that everyone that is on the calls is to some degree interchangeable.
I still pulled you out of the driver's seat.
The guys in the back should have the bare minimum where you can be trusted to grab a hydrant by yourself. You can be trusted to stretch a pre-connect or whatever. Sure, when you're driving or when you're the officer, then you need more. But the bare minimum should be the bare minimum where you can trust a guy to. I always said, Paul McComb, because this happened to you. We used to say, oh, you can't have any probies on whatever truck. And I would say, well, what if only probies show up? Then what do you do?
Been
and
there,
that happened
done that.
to you, right? Like
I know.
You got to the thing and 4 orange helmets popped out. Well, let's make sure that before guys are probies going to calls, you can at least get a little bit of stuff done before the cavalry shows up.
Are you saying that there should be a minimum level requirement by province or state for firefighter training?
Sure, but I think if the province or state's not going to do that, the fire department should. Can't always rely on the government.
Often they do, but I think it should be a regulation, in my opinion, because we haven't done a correlation on that. Is that how many LODDs are a result of lack of state minimum training levels? That would be interesting to examine.
Well, the argument could be, Paul, that how many line of duty deaths do we have in Alberta?
Right.
Right, and then that would be the political argument. It's like, well, nobody dies. Why would we have 4 guys on the rig? We can drop it down to 3 or to 2 till we kill somebody, and then we can hire more.
It goes
Like,
back to like what Dirk says lots, where if you don't have the people with the training to do whatever task is needed, you need to accept that and make that like, sorry, our truck's full of untrained probies today because that's whoever showed up. So we, no matter what, we can't go in. We're not going in.
But that's what BC has done and Saskatchewan is doing, is they're establishing a level of service based on training and response, and they're making it public. We haven't done that. The next one, who's most likely for a Mayday?
can I take a guess? Can I take a guess?
Sure.
First arriving crews within the first 4 minutes.
Yeah, and its engines are the most likely in both career and part-time volunteer, but truck company operations are 10% of the fire service only, and they account for 40% of the Maydays. So it's kind of like I remember a study that the Fire Apparatus Manufacturers Association did on tankers and tenders, and the tenders prescribed they're the smallest number of fire apparatus in the North American fleet with the highest number of fatalities and accidents, because they're tenders and they're often driven by inexperienced or ill-prepared people, and they're often not designed correctly. So the same here. Truck companies actually get hurt more, but there are a lot less truck companies in the nation.
But why doesn't say why? They say they get hurt more, but why? And what are they doing? Are they doing an assigned task, or are the truckies trying to be host monkeys and trying to hump hose, which they don't practice, or like that doesn't say that would be important, right? Because
You can deep dive into these numbers a little more. Like engines should be the most because there's the most of them, right? Every fire is going to have more engines than trucks at it, and it's like, Paul, the tenders might be the least amount of fleet, but that's because places like New York and Chicago and LA have 300 engine companies and 0 tenders, and the tenders are driving for 20 minutes to get to a call, and then the hydrant, and then they're doing way more driving during an event than an engine that drives in New York City for 6 blocks and then pumps for 2 hours.
I'll make a controversial statement here in that truck company operations being a small percentage of the apparatus fleet in North America at 10%, having 40% of all the Maydays, I'm going to tell you, it's roof ventilation.
Well, the other question I have is, what about the smaller departments that don't even have a truck? They're still doing truck work. Where does that fall into this?
And here's the other thing: maybe the truckies are so diligent they call and made it earlier than the engine companies. Because what we're trying to tell everybody nowadays is like, call the Mayday. Call the Mayday if you feel like it. That you feel something is wrong, call the Mayday. So we're encouraging guys to call more Maydays, but then in return, when a certain truck calls more Maydays, then it kind of looks bad. It was like, oh, yeah, they're getting in trouble way more. Of course, they are more in trouble because they're searching. They probably without a hose line, maybe not even using the thermal imaging camera. Right? These are all things that could happen. And I don't think somebody that falls through the ceiling or through the roof is going to call a Mayday because he's in trouble.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree with you, Paul, that I don't think it is a lot of vertical ventilation. Because when you look back at all the secret list reports or whatever, there's not a lot of vertical ventilation guys calling Maydays. It's the guys that are inside the building that are trapped in the collapses or trapped in the rapid fire event, which sure, they might be affected because of the vertical ventilation that's going on, but it's the guys inside that are calling the Mayday. The guys, and I'm not saying it never happens. I mean, we all saw the thing in Los Angeles with the guys on the roof that came down the ladder, but I think for the most part, it wouldn't be the vertical vent guys that are falling through roofs and all that kind of thing.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
See, with the roof ventilation too, is like I hear this quite often right now because there's a tendency now to go back and promote vertical ventilation, and then we always got to be careful when we talk about this, like, what buildings are we talking about? Which environment are we talking about? Are we talking about ranch, no basement? And it freaking works. It works absolutely. They're coordinated. They do this all the time. It's safe. But then I hear chiefs saying, "Wow, the last time we killed somebody during roof ventilation was 11 years ago." But then every other week you hear about somebody critically injured falling off a roof, doing vertical ventilation when it wasn't even necessary. So I think they like to argue with, oh, we didn't kill anyone, but we had career-ending injuries, and that's not a big deal. Like, I think there's a time and place for vertical ventilation, but in our neck of the woods, I don't see that at all. There's other ways, better ways to deal with the ventilation. That's just my 2 cents. So
The crew size when maydays occur, 20 in career departments, 29% only 2 people, 41% 3 people, and 30% 4 people in the crew. Volunteers a little different. 40% 2 persons. So they're trying to bite off more than they can chew. Maybe they're the only people there. 3 persons, 39%. 4 persons, 21%. So definitely the biggest is it's interesting that the 3-person crew has more maydays than the 2-person crew in a career department. But I suppose it's because they're holding back more.
or there's more 3-person crews.
Yeah, that's what I was
right,
going
right.
to say is I'd
In
like
the
to see beside these numbers. I don't know if it's easy to do on the volunteer side, but on the career side, like what percentage of crews are 2-person crews, or 3-person crews, or 4-person crews?
Yeah. You can dig into this. This is online. It's available. It's called Project Mayday, and they have all the stats there and everything. It's
So
Don Abbott was a founder of the Phoenix Training Center, and he developed this kind of in his spare time. He just passed away here, I think, last year.
Just a few weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but I agree with Doug. And another thing I have problems with these numbers is when we talk about 3-man crews, is that 3 guys, like, is it the driver, the officer, and the firefighter? Is that a 3-man crew? Or is it the 3 guys going in? It's the officer, 2 firefighters. Or is it an officer and 1 firefighter? Like that's the problem with those numbers. And I agree with Doug. Like, it's different for every department. Right. So if you say 4-man career guys get into more trouble than 3, again, is that because the driver's outside? There's only 3 inside. I find that hard to look at those numbers and take them serious in a sense.
I would assume that this is the number of people on the truck.
Right. I think so.
Yeah.
Maydays typically occur in a career department. Most of them are at 20 to 25 minutes into the call. And it's the same for volunteer at 19 minutes into the call. So right around that 20-minute mark seems to be where most, although not by much. I mean, it goes 25 to 30 is a few hundred more. So the numbers are close. But it's in that 20 to 25 to 30 minutes are where most of the Maydays are occurring. I suppose that's also when the guys they're running out of air. Right? That's their first bottle. And they're running out of air. Yeah. Which actually goes to the next one. The types of Mayday, the highest number in both career and volunteer is lost separated from hose line. So at 18% for career and 24% for volunteer part-time. The next highest, of course, is air problems.
It makes it a little tough, though, if you're going to look at these numbers and say, let's based on these numbers change the way we do things. Nothing is like a clear runaway, right? Like it's 2% difference between lost and separated from the hose line and air problems, and then 0.2 for floor collapse. Like, it's not like there's a glaring, like, we're doing this wrong, let's stop. It's not saying vertical ventilation is 55% of the Maydays. You know what I mean? Where you could sit back and say, like, whoa, maybe we shouldn't be doing vertical ventilation. And the top 3 things there are like very different things. They don't have much to do with loss or separated from the hose line and air problems. could be correlated, as in like I'm wasting time trying to find the hose. But those two things have nothing to do with a floor collapse, which is the next thing on the list, right?
Right. I think the separated from hose line, I mean, and we see it based on our experience where they didn't have a hose line, or they fell through the floor and lost the hose line, or they couldn't find it, got disoriented and bailed out. And the air problems, air management, and that's a huge one, is we need to manage our air. I mean, it's so important that NFPA changed the air management, the alarm, from 25% to 33% because people were leaving the inadequate air to get out, right? 46% of Maydays occurred in residential properties. 41% in commercial. So that's pretty close to 2 there. Residential or commercial, right?
Well, residential, definitely more fires, right? Definitely more fires in residential. Commercial, more space to get lost.
Yeah, I'd say more fires in residential, but bigger, worse fires in commercial.
Yeah.
Separated from hose line. No, 60% of the Maydays in the career had no hose line.
I think that could be tied back to the truck company stuff, right? Lots of places, which I'm not opposed to if you have a good hose line on the fire. If you're doing a good aggressive search, bringing a hose line with you is hampering your efforts. So,
And if you like, the FDNY always sends the truck crew above the floor, fire floor, because that's the greatest risk for people. But it's not the fire risk; it's the toxic smoke that's the risk.
And Aaron
right?
Fields said, I don't know if he's right or not. I didn't dive into the numbers, but he said the floor above the fire is where we call our most maydays and where we find the most victims. So, like, it's dangerous to go there, but we got to go there.
Because that's our job. Yeah, absolutely.
But you have to assess the risk. You're not supposed to get killed doing your job.
You should be assessing the risk in everything you do. But,
right.
But
right.
like,
because you're not supposed to get killed doing your job. Yes, you're firefighters.
You assess the risk walking to the fire truck when the tones go off. Like, you're not jumping down the stairs. You assess the risk the way I think all of us can admit that if dispatch comes on the radio and you're going to a structure fire and they say there's reported kids trapped, you drive a little differently than like, oh, we've gone to this building 3 times today for alarms.
For sure.
But our job's all about taking calculated risks. No one's going to say there's no risk involved. It's about the risks that you have to be trained to take them and take calculated ones.
If you control the fire before you go above it, it's a much better environment for you.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. But then again, it depends also on your building. So you got no building construction. If the FDNY goes above the fire floor, those are usually brick buildings or high rises where the spread of fire within the structure is highly unlikely, but there's still going to be a lot of toxic smoke.
Well, that's why
that being said, there's no fire risk to the firefighters, but if you get lost and you run out of air, I don't care if there's a fire or not.
That's why things need to be coordinated too, right? Like we say the FDNY goes above the fire floor, but that's the second due truck going above the fire. So the first due truck's already on the fire floor. The first due engine, I mean. The first due truck's already on the fire floor. The second due engine's already stretching a backup line, and the next truck's going above the fire. It's not like they're just showing up and going, oh, fire's on 3, we're going to 4. There's a coordinated way to do this all. And that's what makes it safe, is you do your job so other people can do their job.
Yeah. And it's predetermined, so everybody knows what to do, so there's no time delay. And command doesn't have to worry about that stuff, right?
In the low air ones, to prove the air management problem, that's the one we really need to get on top of. 66% of the part-time on-call low air was out of air or less than 500 pounds remaining, and 47% in the career were the same. Out of air, low air.
That's discipline, that's training. That's
training, and that's command too. The officer, the captain, the officer on the unit That's their training. They need to know that, hey guys, we need to guys and girls, we need to head out.
But back to how many people are in that crew. If I have a 3-man or 4-man crew, a firefighter crew, then the officer does not have to work that hard. Then yes, the officer should make sure that everybody has enough air. If it's just the nozzle man and the fire captain is the heel and is humping hose, he has no time to think of his air. And even if you have your heads up display, you know when he's going to react when that clicker goes off.
Yeah.
That's when, and that's usually when things happen, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like somebody on the outside. Somebody on the outside has to let the captain know, Captain, check your cruise's air. And it's not just individually, right?
And that's crew management too, right?
I'd be curious to know what these numbers, like what percent of people are using what size of bottle, right? Like
Which probably has it in the stats.
We use 60-minute bottles where we work. Lots of places use 45 or 30-minute bottles. So
many of the reports we've done, they switched after the LODD.
They use small bottles, right?
To a 45 or longer, because a 30-minute bottle only doesn't last me 20 minutes.
Yeah, and the NFPA is a percentage, right? It's not like at 500 pounds it goes off. It's at a third. Well, a third of 30-minute bottle and a third of a 60-minute bottle is very different.
Yes.
But then you have to adjust your rotation too, right? If I know I only get 5 to 10 minutes of the first crew, I have to have a second crew. If I know I have to wait 10, 15 minutes for my second crew to arrive, I want the 45 or 60-minute bottle, right? Mm-hmm. And the nice thing nowadays is like those 5.5s. So if you have the same size for a 60-minute 4.5, now you put 5.5 in there. That's a 75-minute cylinder, right? So higher pressure, more air. So that's something that the department has to decide what's important. If you have a high manpower, a well-staffed department, like I think is it Toronto that switched years ago from 45 to 30. Well, it's nicer. You can move faster. It's less strain on your back. But you also have to keep in mind, I got to pull these guys out and have other guys ready to go in to relieve the crews, right?
Well, there's also the other side of the equation where, like, you don't want to give people too much time in there, where now you're getting into fatigue problems and all that kind of stuff, right? Your body's working harder in your buttoned up bunker gear that keeps all your heat in and all that stuff. So there's a fine balance somewhere between enough air, not enough air, and too much air. So,
and how long to get out, right? That's the big thing, right?
Well, that's what the third's for, right? Well, I mean, you'd argue the
third's your emergency supply if you get stuck.
Yeah, I know.
You got to be out the door before the third is hit. That's
in
a
real
mayday.
life that doesn't happen.
I'm not sure about. Yeah, I'm not sure about the other manufacturers, but Scott has those two green lights, the orange and the red light. So, according to the rule of air management, when it turns orange, that's your return. You're done.
Exactly.
Right? You are done. But what do we do? Most of the time, we go till it's red and the no air clicker goes off because it's a small house.
Back to culture.
Because it's a small house. It's only 15 feet from the front door, right?
It's just like when the chief's standing outside saying, "Guys, get out! The fire's getting bad." And you're inside and you don't have the big picture. You're saying, just give us one more minute, Chief. We almost got it. Meanwhile, he's outside and the fire's through the roof and he's saying, no. It's the same thing, right? Oh, I know I'm supposed to get out. My air's it's yellow, but just 2 more minutes and we'll have the fire out and we can all get out, right? It's the same thing. And there's probably lots of, at a big high-rise or commercial fire, you could be like just getting to where you have to be and your air's at whatever.
And well, that's command training though. Both of them. One is if the people need to be getting out early, you need to tell them, and they need to trust you that when you say get out, get out. And command training in that you need some way to get to the fire floor. You need to control a hallway or a stairway. That's all. It all surrounds around training and culture. It's okay in your minds as full-time career firefighters to not Mayday when the red light turns on? Probably. That's the culture. Is that I'm okay. I know I can make it back out, and that's why we have line of duty deaths. That's why we do this podcast.
Well, apparently truckies call Maydays more often, so they
That's
have
right.
more
That's right.
brains.
Yeah.
Obviously, they have more brains than the engine guys.
Good discussion, guys. I mean, stuff we see, the trends, the culture, the 360s, that kind of stuff. We'll probably wrap it up here soon, pretty quick.
Yeah, because we could have another one about the same topic, and we can just go on and on about this.
I mean, we're talking about the recurring themes here, and it is kind of eye-opening to me, all these reports that we've done, that like we get to the recommendations part, and we're getting to the point now where we read them and it's like, oh yeah, just like this one, or oh yeah, just like that one we just did. And then you even take that farther, and I take all these things that we keep, this happened at every single one, this happened at 90%, and then I go to work and I'm like, ooh, we do this, but we just talk about how that killed people. And it's hopefully our listeners do that too, and there's a purpose to all this. But it's very eye-opening to me.
That's why we're here, to make everybody better at this job and hopefully prevent it from happening again, right?
Exactly. Good talk.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Emergency Traffic Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Give us a like or a thumbs up on your app to help people find our podcast, and look forward to doing the next one. Thanks a lot.
Stay safe.
See you at the big one.